Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. So today we're putting on our system architect hats for a massive deep dive. We're looking at how to fundamentally architect AI to just eliminate manual engineering toil. I mean, if you've ever felt the absolute pain of wrestling with fragile cron jobs just to get an agent to execute a basic scheduled task, well, you're definitely in the right place. We're going to deploy the exact blueprints for building proactive agents that actually work. Okay, let's dive right into our blueprint for today. We'll be hitting 1, the proactive paradigm shift, 2, the anatomy of a routine, 3, automating docs, 4, verifying service health, and finally 5, prioritizing issue backlogs. All right, starting with section 1, the proactive paradigm shift, moving past cron jobs. So to really understand this new architecture, we first got to acknowledge the current pain, right? Building proactive agents today is honestly a nightmare. You can't just run them locally, because the second your laptop goes to sleep, your agent dies right along with it. No way. So you end up having to manage remote hosting, data persistence, OAuth flows for tool connectors, and just this tangled web of really fragile cron jobs. Honestly, building the infrastructure just to kick off a headless session is usually 10 times more work than writing the AI prompt itself. But Anthropic recently introduced this feature called routines inside of Claude Code, and it's anchored on this one incredibly powerful realization. Coding agents shouldn't wait for you to press enter. I absolutely love this. It literally redefines how we architect our entire workflows. And this brilliantly illustrates that architectural shift. We're finally moving away from a reactive tool, something you swing like a hammer, completely human-initiated and tied strictly to your local machine. What Anthropic's routines feature gives us instead is a proactive teammate. It's event-driven, autonomous, and runs entirely on managed infrastructure. It literally notices when a build breaks or an issue is logged, and it takes action without you ever having to ask. Moving on to section 2, anatomy of a routine, looking at the system design blueprint. When you're building a routine, Claude actually handles that super painful infrastructure layer for you. The hosting, state management, the authentication, it abstracts all that complexity. That leaves you to focus purely on your domain expertise through 3 key architectural decisions. First up, the trigger. So when exactly should it run? Second, the context. What repos or live data does the agent actually need to be successful? And third, steerability. How do we guide and bound the final output? All right, section 3, blueprint for automating docs. Let's look at a real deployment. So since the beginning of the year, weekly pull requests for Claude Code went up a massive 200%. Now, obviously, this created incredible velocity for the users, but it became an absolutely unsustainable bottleneck for Sarah. She's the lone documentation engineer responsible for keeping the docs updated across all those rapid changes. So she became an early adopter of routines. Let's actually map out the architecture Sarah used to solve this bottleneck. To automatically diff new code changes and generate documentation PRs, she defined her trigger as a simple weekly schedule. Though you could totally use an event-based trigger instead, like a GitHub webhook that fires whenever code is merged. For context, she connected the source code repo, the docs repo, and a Slack connector. And for steerability, you can use human verification or, get this, even set up a second routine for agent-on-agent PR critiques. How cool is that? But even though it's running autonomously out in the cloud, you're never actually locked out. Routines are highly steerable. If an event triggers a routine, you can monitor that session live right in the web interface. And if you need to intervene mid-session, maybe you already made a manual change, you just tell Claude to stop, resume, or pivot in a totally different direction. It's a completely interactive system. Okay, section 4, blueprint for verifying service health, creating a deployment safety net. Now, for the DevOps folks tuning in, this deploy verifier blueprint is absolutely incredible. The trigger here is an event-based webhook firing right after your CI/CD pipeline finishes a deploy. The context then merges your source code with live telemetry from Datadog or Grafana, and for steerability, Claude runs a full investigation on that telemetry and just pings you in Slack with a human go or no-go recommendation on whether the deployment is actually healthy. But here is the truly beautiful part about system design. Trust scales over time. You start off by having Claude run the investigation and wait for your approval. But as you watch Claude work and you really begin to trust its decisions based on that monitoring data, you can evolve the routine. The long-term vision here is that trusted routines don't just send you a Slack ping about a bad deploy. They autonomously trigger the rollback themselves, basically minimizing downtime to absolute zero. Finally, section 5, blueprint for prioritizing issue backlogs, taming the ticket noise. So, if your job involves parsing through hundreds of GitHub issues or just endless Slack bug reports, this is the blueprint for you. You set a time-based weekly schedule as your trigger. By giving Claude context access to your GitHub issues and Slack histories, you can automate a massive administrative burden. Claude essentially reads through all the noise, prioritizes the critical issues, and for steerability, it actually initiates the first steps by opening the initial PRs to fix them. It's a real game changer. Now, after designing all these incredible architectures, you might be thinking deployment is going to be super complex. Well, it's not. You bypass the infrastructure setup completely. Literally, inside the terminal, you just type a single command, /schedule. You type your natural language prompt, like review merged code once a week and update docs, and the system walks you through the rest natively. So we've mapped the paradigm shift, the system architecture, and some really specific blueprints for docs, deployments, and backlogs. But the real power is applying this to your own workflows. So I'll leave you with this. Look at your daily bottlenecks. What tedious, repetitive task are you going to delegate to your new proactive teammate today? It's time to stop swinging the hammer and start managing the team. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and happy building.